Ordinary Road together, where throughout this we get to see some of the faces of our church and our congregation. And we're talking about, it's the ordinary road that we walk where we meet our extraordinary God. And through the very average, ordinary, mundane things that we do throughout the day, the goodness of God pops up in those places. And often it's the places that we would least expect, but often it's also the places that just make sense. God pops up at home while we're cleaning, while we make the cup of coffee before the kids wake up, while we're folding laundry. God is in those spaces. While we're at work, when we're elbow deep in spreadsheets, when we're fixing the shingles from the storm we had just a couple days ago, or when we're teaching kids that have their headphones in, we're not sure if they're even listening to us, God is in that space as well. While we play, while we're at a table with friends in between services, eating and maybe playing a board game or playing cards, God is in our play. But also God is in our sorrow. When we bury a loved one, when we're sitting there with a kiddo that's sick and can't go to school, we have to explain to them why they have to stay home with dad. Or when you've lost a job, or you're wondering how you are going to pay your bills, God pops up in those spaces. It's in the ordinary where we experience God, because where we are, God is, because God inhabits his people. God is with his creation. But for me, I think the continual question is, but why does it have to be ordinary? Why can't it be much more extraordinary? Why can't, when I'm trying to make a big life-changing decision of where to move, who to date, who to marry, if it's time for kids or not, that I can't just go like the Israelites did, where they had a fire by night and a cloud by day. So I know without a shadow of a doubt that God, that you are in this. But that's not the life we live or the way things work. Why the ordinary road? I think it's because it's the road that Jesus walked the most. Jesus walked the ordinary road. When we walk through the Gospels, yes, we see the extraordinary, but it happens in the ordinary. Jesus is walking from town to town. He is eating with friends. He is playing with kids. He is taking a nap in a boat during a storm when his disciples are freaking out. Jesus is just snoozing on the underside. Jesus took naps. He spent time in prayer. He ate so many meals. Yeah, there was lots of miraculous moments, but so much of the road that Jesus walked was an ordinary one. And this ordinary road led to the profound. The ordinary road led to the miracles that Jesus had. And so far on this ordinary road, we've talked about prayer and we've talked about work. We've talked about that in prayer, God seeks to shape and form us. That it's in prayer that the curtain of our life is moved to the side and everybody can kind of see the stuff that nobody wants to see. How many of you have a junk drawer in your home? Right? We're in the Midwest. We have a drunk drawer. Maybe we have a drunk drawer. Hopefully not. If not, we can go back to the confession. Very different drawers. But we all have that. And prayer opens that up for God to be able to see, to sift through it, and to show us which way we ought to go. And we also talked about work. Often work, we see it as a task that it's something that we have to do. We have to do it to live. But last week we talked through the theology of work, and that work is not meant to be a punishment. The things that we do with our hand is not meant to be a punishment. It's meant to be extensions of God's creativity, because God rolled up his elbows and he went to work when he created us. And we were created on purpose to be a blessing. And so the things that we do with our hands are to benefit those around us and to be a blessing to those we come in contact with. And today we come to eating. Oh, this one's going to be fun. Eating is meaningful. Maybe even a spiritual experience for us. So I started writing this message just a couple of days ago, and I needed some levity in the message. So I decided, why not make people mad on Facebook, right? So I made a hot take where I likened Chicago pizza to a casserole. Oh, yeah. I did not know what kind of hornet's nest I just kicked. Oh my goodness. I got private messages. I even got some personal letters in my box here at the church, and I was like, ooh, I upset some Lutheran ladies, and they are mad. Thank you for participating. I needed this. I wanted to put one such one. I took away the name, but I love this one. You have pinched a nerve in the heart of this lifelong Lutheran. No, just no, because it's not lowercase no, it's uppercase. But there's no exclamation mark, so I might be okay. A casserole, aka hot dish, to Lutheran purists is nothing like a pizza, young one. You need some schooling prior to these answers. Oh my goodness. I have many old church cookbooks I can share with you to show you what a casserole hot dish is. A casserole hot dish has all the ingredients mixed together and is baked. It is scooped out and served with, maybe green beans, broccoli, or some kind of pickles. They're nothing like pizzas. If we are going to be friends, you'll need to know and understand the difference. Whew. I just got learned. Goodness gracious. I had to put that on there. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Be careful what you put on Facebook. But eating is meaningful. It's personal. It's ordinary. And it is holy. Many of us eat to remember. I have a blue bowl that was my grandma's. She passed away many, many years ago. But whenever I'm in a day and I'm wanting cereal or I'm making eggs in the morning, it's the only bowl I reach for. She used to make me green eggs and ham in that bowl. And it's something that I reach for every day. Some of us eat for comfort. We've had a bad day. We've had a hard day at work. And so we fix ourselves something that just makes us feel good. Many of us, we did this during COVID, and we came out of COVID a little rounder than we entered it, but that's okay. We needed comfort during that time. Many of us eat for fun. Something that my wife and I love to do is we love to go out to different restaurants that we've never been to because it's fun to experience new things together. We also eat for celebration. Weddings, 4th of July, Christmas, Thanksgiving, birthdays, baptisms. There's so many things where we celebrate around eating. And some of us, we eat for culture. Many of us are not from here. And so we eat, and the way we eat is to remember and to keep our culture alive. So I married into a Polish family. My wife's Polish. My mother-in-law is Polish. And though there's something that we do that's a little unique on Christmas Eve. So throughout the day, we make pierogies. I had never made pierogies before, but we make mushroom pierogies. We also make blackberry, prune, and blueberry pierogies for dessert. And so we'd have pierogies with beet soup for the first course, and then we'd have pigs in a blanket with potatoes, green beans, and then we'd have dessert pierogies for afterwards. One other thing that we would also do together is we would take communion together at the end. And we have a wafer that is in this, it's not like a baby Jesus wafer, but it's not like a baby doll that's a wafer, but it's a baby on a wafer that is underneath the Christmas tree. And we take it, we break it together, and then we go around to each person and we say what we're thankful for that person. It forces you to come face to face and to also talk about the things that weren't so great. We rehash some things, but at the end, there's forgiveness, and there's a beautiful calling out of the goodness in each person. When we eat, spend time in celebration, party around tables, remember, invite, and welcome others, I think we are most like the Jesus of the Gospels. So when you're at Portillo's, ask for that extra cheese. You're most like Jesus. If you're at a brewery, get another beer. You're most like Jesus. Kind of kidding. I think Jesus loved food. I think he loved conversation around food. He was always with people, and he was either leaving a meal or going to a meal. Eating and Jesus go hand in hand. For Jesus, the table is a place where the sacred and the ordinary met. And for us, our tables are the place where the sacred and the ordinary meet as well. And not just anybody can be at our tables. We don't just open up our tables to any and everyone. It's personal, it's meaningful, because what happens around the table is important. And our gospel story today leads us to a table. Not just any table, the table of a prominent religious figure. And Jesus is invited, all eyes are on him, and they're wondering what he's going to do. A table, a meal, a party, an ordinary moment in time. Now, the start of this dinner party starts with an awkward encounter. How many of you have ever had awkward encounters at dinner? Yeah, someone raise their hand really fast. We all have been there, so I know she's raising your hand for everybody. We have all been there. So Jesus gets invited to a dinner. This makes me wonder that Jesus, he's a popular guy, so who wouldn't want to invite Jesus? And he's invited to the house of a very prominent figure, a prominent religious figure, a prominent Pharisee who he had a lot of run-ins with. Now, the Pharisees in that time, there's a lot of kind of weird understandings around the Pharisees today. A lot of people believe that the Pharisees just tried to keep the law in such a way so that they would be saved, that they wanted to work their salvation out. But the point of the Pharisees is they got to see what happened when God's glory did not return to the temple. And so their hope was to be as covenantly faithful as possible. And it was one way of living. They wanted to live out the covenant in such a way that God's glory would return. And so they were very meticulous with how they lived out this understanding of what was the law. And this wasn't just a regular leader. It was someone with means, someone who had a large house, lots of money, significance, and resource. To be invited to his house was to know that you had arrived, that you had made it. But why Jesus, since they are in such opposition throughout the Gospel of Luke? They have run-ins often. It could just simply be Jesus was rising in popularity. So why wouldn't you want to invite the popular person to your house? Maybe it was out of vanity. This would be a feather in my cap. This person is rising. He's a rabbi that people have their eyes on. I want him at my place because they see him, they see me, and my status is elevated. But maybe it was something much more sinister. Maybe this wasn't the point at all. And we see this in verse 1 on 14:1. It says this: One Sabbath, when Jesus went to eat in the house of a prominent Pharisee, he was being carefully watched. Jesus wasn't invited out of good faith. He's being watched, and they're looking for something. They are watching his every move, and I think they are looking for dirt on this rabbi, and they want to see how he responds in these settings. And lo and behold, as he starts to come into this house, there's a man with a disease that's right before the house that he was invited to on the Sabbath. What a coincidence. And it goes like this in verses 3 through 6. Jesus asked the Pharisees and experts in the law, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not?" But they remained silent. So taking hold of the man, he healed him and sent him on the way. Then he asked them, "If one of you has a child or an ox that falls into a well on the Sabbath day, will you not immediately pull it out?" And they had nothing to say. They remained silent. They had nothing to say. Jesus turns the tables. He knows he's being watched. I think he even knew that the invite to the dinner was not in good faith, but Jesus doesn't allow a moment of potential trouble to keep him from being the most compassionate version. To keep him from compassion. And so the question is asked, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not? Whether they thought it was lawful or not, Jesus didn't care. He chose compassion. And in doing so, he reiterates from Deuteronomy and Leviticus that shows that there's exceptions for cases of sick children and animals. And in this moment, it was kind of an in-your-face to these Pharisees, shaming them for their disapproval of this poor man's healing. And as the text makes clear, they had nothing to say. A few things. Compassion is always the right answer. Compassion is always the right answer, and compassion moves our hearts to be more and more like Christ. If you find yourself being a compassionate person, you are going to get in trouble. And often, you might find yourself in trouble with religious leaders being compassionate. But compassion is the way of Jesus. So far we have a pre-drama event, even before the dinner, but it gets better. So if you have popcorn, you might want to sit back and grab some, because It gets better. As Jesus enters the home, there's people jockeying for position at the front of the table to see who is best, who should be exalted. And dinner parties were like this. They were major social events. I invite you, so next time you invite me, you invite your friends, I get to know you, and I get elevated in status. We see this a lot at like political events. You can always know who the biggest donor is in the pocket of whatever political figure if they throw a gala, because they're at the best table. They're in the spot. When you go looking through bills, you can always see who gave the most money because there's always some stipulations in there. You scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. And that's what this was about. And I think we're all guilty of doing this. We've all been in places where we went to go invite ourselves to someone or go introduce ourselves to someone because we needed it. It was a few years ago. I was at a preacher's conference and there was someone that I really wanted to meet. And there's something that I do. I bring my daughter with me on most of my trips because I love being with her. Now that she's moving into kindergarten in the fall, I can't do that anymore. But there was one time where I was at a preaching conference at the seminary I went to, and I wanted to talk to someone. So I went up to Mia and I said, "Hey, Mia, I will get you ice cream if you accidentally bump into this man." And so she walked up to her and started talking. I was like, "Oh, hey, Mia, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, hi, I'm Jake. It's nice to meet you." None of us are guilty of doing that. But while Jesus is at the dinner table, he lets them have it. And he says this: when he noticed how the guests picked the places of honor at the table, he told them this parable. When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. If so, the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, "Give this person your seat." Then, humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. But when you are invited, take the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he will say to you, "Friend, move up to a better place." Then you will be honored in the presence of all the other guests. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. You think too highly of yourself. How about you take what you think of yourself and dial it back a little bit? Step back and just sit at a lower place. What Jesus is saying here is, let God be the one that makes your name known. Because when you do it, people can see through that. When I do it, people can see through it. But it gets better. Jesus turns to the host, this high-ranking official, in the earshot of everyone and says, "Now you stop inviting these type of people to your events. Stop inviting the powerful, those that can only scratch your back, those that only help you out or who lift you up. Stop inviting people like that make you more popular." And this is the worst part. As Jesus is telling it to the host, he is literally naming the people that are at that table watching him. What I want you to do is invite the poor, the crippled, the type of people at the table that can't help you. Essentially, Jesus was saying, "Hey, host, it's not about your social status. It's never about that. Now, if I'm at the table, I'm uncomfortable. I'm just wondering, like, hey, I just made it. Like, people hardly know who I am, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, maybe I'm just looking to get some connections, maybe eat some good food that I don't have access to. But now I'm sitting here with this popular rabbi who's saying that I'm the problem. And I just came here for the food, but now I'm leaving with a question. Do I live my life in such a way that I only care about those who care about me? Do I live my life in such a way that I only care about those who care about me? And I'm sitting at this table unable to eat, filled with guilt and shame, because the answer is often yes. We often live our lives in such a way that we only care about those who care about us. I can scratch their back, and hopefully they can scratch mine. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable. The people at the table don't know what to do, and so someone at the table yells this: "Blessed is the one who will eat at the feast in the kingdom of God." It sounds profound, but this is no different than at your home when people are arguing about faith and politics, and someone says, "How about that weather? How about the Yankees? Have you seen the Dow today?" Just trying to lighten the mood. That's what's trying to happen. They're trying to cut the tension in the room. But Jesus isn't done, and he goes into another parable. And he says there was a master of a house who wanted to throw a party. And he had already sent out invites. And during this time, there's two types of invites. There's the initial invite where you get it and you RSVP and say, yeah, I'm coming. And then there's a follow-up saying that you are coming. Master's already spent tons of money, and so he sends out the invites, and 3 people reply back. I bought a field. I got to check it out. I can't come. I just bought a field. I just bought 5 yokes of oxen. I got to check them out. I can't come. I just got married. I can't come. Liars. Word comes back, and the host is mad. And so he goes out and says, go, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind. And they come on it. And then he goes and he says, the servant says, there is still room. And so the master says, go on out to the far areas, to those that have no space, to those that are lepers, to those who are eunuchs that have no place of worship because of what has happened to them or what they were born with. Go out to them and bring them to this table. And he does. And then a very uncomfortable verse is said. I tell you, not one of those who were invited will get a taste of my banquet. The angle that's often interpreted of these 3 people is that they were greedy, that they had lots of means, and that they didn't want to come to the party. I think there's another way of looking at this. You don't just randomly buy a field that you don't look at. You don't randomly buy lots of oxen that you've never seen. You don't get married knowing that you don't have a lot of money and that you need to be invited to parties so that way you can get your back scratched and be a part because you don't have much starting out. And you just say, nah, I can't come. I think there's a better way of seeing this story. I don't think it has to do with greed. I think this has to do with not wanting to dine and share our tables with those who deem undesirable. I think it has to do with not wanting to dine with those that we deem undesirable. I think these people purposely chose not to say yes to the invitation because they knew what kind of parties this master threw and what they turned into. And we've seen this in recent history. We don't want to dine with those that we seem undesirable. Segregation, history of redlining, when AIDS first came on the scene and we wouldn't even touch people. During World War II, internment camps for those of Asian descent because we were just based off fear. We didn't know what to do. And here's the interesting thing. This parable is for those at the table that he was just invited to. And this parable was being lived out in front of him. These were the people who have been invited to a new way of living, a new kingdom, but they are not choosing to be a part of it. The tables we are meant to foster are the ones where all are welcomed. No asterisk, no italices, no other questions, where anyone is welcomed at our table. Because it's the table, it's the place where we participate in the mission of God. Often in the church, we don't evangelize much anymore because we don't know how to. The church has gotten a really weird rap because of a lot of things that have happened. We've seen leader after leader fall from sexual immorality, from lots of things happening. But one of the greatest evangelistic tools we have are our tables. It's a place where we just share meals, where we share stories, where our life gets to intertwine with someone else's who may look differently, act differently, or think differently than us. One of the best ways to share the good news is simply to invite your home. And I'm not talking about clean up and make it look like nobody lives there. We know what that looks like, right? Where you like chaotically clean before people come over. You live there. It's fine if there's some dirty dishes and some dust in places. I have 2 kids. There's going to be dirty dishes, and I'm hoping it's chocolate, but it may not be. We'll see. Right? Invite people over. And I want to end with these 2 questions. Our tables are meant for places where people can be welcomed and invited. They don't have to perform. They can just eat and be and share. So my question is this. If your life was depicted as a party, who would be on the invited guest list? If you can think through your life, your accomplishments, what you've lived through, what you're going through, who has been on your invited guest list? And then the second one, is how or are you including outsiders at your table? Our table is meant to bring people in. It's a wonderful and beautiful tool. Some of my best relationships have come from just inviting people to our table. We haven't always had much, but we've shared what we do have. There's something meaningful, spiritual, and wonderful around your table. And when you talk with people, get to understand them, and listen, your heart grows for those that are different than you. And their heart grows for you. And we become more and more like Jesus when we share. Good trouble, fueled by compassion, is the way of Jesus. We do things out of compassion. Movements are fueled by compassion, and they are sustained by the Holy Spirit. So this week, we don't have a midweek service, but we are encouraging you to open up your table to someone. I know sometimes it takes 10 to 17 business days to get our calendars to align. So this coming Wednesday, just spend time in prayer and just ask God to illuminate someone that you can invite. And set that up and bring them to your table. And see how your heart becomes more like Jesus. Let's pray. God, our hearts, we want to be fueled by you. Lord, the table is a place where the upside down ethics of the kingdom can be seen. Where it's not the matter of means, it's not the matter of beliefs, it's not the matter of what we look like that matters, but it's that you have created us, that we are your image bearers, whether we follow you or not. And it's the table where we are invited to partake. And so, God, open our hearts and our imaginations to see your table as a space where we can invite people in. That our table can be a safe place to those that may not have food, or those that are hurting, or those that are just lonely and need something that we have, which is presence. Lord, help us gift people presence. And we pray.
Thank you for listening to the Encounter Faith podcast. This podcast is a service of G. Shep Productions from Good Shepherd Lutheran Church in Naperville, Illinois. All rights reserved. If you're in the area, we'd love to meet you on a Sunday morning at our 9 a.m. or 10:45 services. At Good Shepherd, we are inviting everyone to walk together in the calling of Christ for a life of eternal impact. This podcast is produced and hosted by me, Ross Cochran. And our theme song is Wake the Earth by 1111 Worship. Thank you for listening. We'll talk again soon.